the BiotechBikers origin story.
Yes, please.
But basically, I've grown up with a bike, and I've cycled all my life. I had a racing bike as a teenager, early adopter ish of mountain biking in the early 90s.
Cool.
And but always on at a very kind of low key level. I had a couple of friends who were into road biking. They were in clubs, they competed, so I followed them a little bit as a teenager. And yeah, I mean, watched the Tour de France over the summer. That was always a highlight as growing up again there in the 80s, early 90s. So in a really classic heyday of road racing. A lot of great battles, a lot of great controversies, of course, around that period. And I think sort of I'm a different generation to you a little bit, I guess.
Well, you know what I just revisited was the Greg LeMond documentary called The
Yeah,
Last Rider,
right.
and that I think is a snapshot into the 80s and early 90s cycling
Yep,
culture, and
yep,
talk about some storylines
for
between
sure.
his teammates, the Badger, and
Yeah.
I guess there was another Frenchman. Anyway, a great time for
Yeah,
cycling.
so my kids came along early 2000s, and I had a period then of about 10 years of sort of focusing on the family and all of that kind of stuff. Suddenly they became teenagers, a lot more independent. I had a lot more time on my hand, and I had a bunch of friends here in at home in Sweden who were getting more and more into cycling and mountain biking. So I hooked up with a local club, got back into mountain biking again, bought myself a road bike.
How did that feel as now a more mature adult
Yeah, yeah.
father with kids that were more autonomous? How did it feel to get back into the sport?
Yeah, that was it took a little bit of time. I was relatively unfit at
Hmm.
that point. I mean, completely neglected, I guess, sort of that side of things, regular workouts, training, keeping fit. So it was a bit of an uphill. I was mountain biking more or less mostly at that time, and I'd always had a love for the road bike and an affinity with the road bike. And I remember sitting I was out in the countryside one summer here in Sweden and sitting in a cafe in the garden outdoors, and a group of really old guys turned up on the spindly, thin, but they must have been, well into their 70s and even maybe a little bit older. This group of guys who turned up on their road bikes, and I thought, yeah, that's where I want to be.
That's a fantastic vision goal
Yeah,
for your golden years.
exactly. I was relatively unfit. I was a bit overweight, and I was thinking, yeah, this is. I need to do something. So I got myself, as I say, I was doing a little bit of mountain biking, but I also had this love of road biking. So yeah, I bought myself, a kind of an aluminium framed Bianchi, carbon forks, just a fairly basic setup. I bought myself that bike, and I remember going out I mean, just for like 10Ks or 15Ks or something, and it really, really took it out of me. But I persevered. I joined as they joined up with a really good club locally here in my hometown. They had they were running a Tuesday night meetup, and the guy who ran that club, he regales on this story often. He recalls when I turned up at the Tuesday night club with a few extra pounds, too many layers. He was thinking, who on earth is this guy? He's not going to go very far. And to be fair, he was relatively accurate. I think it was after about 20K, I was literally lying in a ditch, cramped up and and struggling. But I
There are various ways to get fit, and that's one of
yeah,
them.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. No,
that's
exactly.
my chosen avenue. If I'm not fit, I just throw myself in the deep end. So
Yeah,
One way to do
for
it.
sure, exactly. And I think it's a sort of it's an ethos as well. That's kind of, and if anybody asks me, who's getting into cycling, I'll always say, ride with people who are some degree better than yourself,
And it's
because
more
it's going
fun
to.
that way.
For sure, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That they're going to help you and they're going to motivate you, and you're just going to improve. So anyway, long story, and this is kind of going back more than 10 years now when I kind of got back into cycling, but basically became a serious club rider, really pushing myself, doing lots of great stuff on the bike. Not necessarily racing, so I've never kind of taken that step of taking out a license and getting into racing, but a lot of sportifs, a lot of regular training. So I was able to do that. Really, a lot of support from my wife. I mean, she's not a
Awesome.
cyclist. She's not a cyclist herself, but I think that there's the she sees the benefits. She sees the effect on my health and well-being, and
Yeah.
it's I'm doing something that I love. She gives me the space to do that. She gets
Good.
time to do other stuff as well. So it becomes a win-win there. So I think
Yeah.
that's been really important.
What I'm dying to know is, as a business development executive for my whole career, what was the spark after you got into, let's put it this way, back into road
Mm.
riding and got
Yeah.
really fit and made it a part of your lifestyle? What was the spark that started to make you want it to be part of your business life as well?
Sure. Road cycling's kicked off again. I'm doing a lot of regular stuff, traveling a lot with work,
Right.
traveling the world. Then I was, so going back to sort of 2000, end of 2017, early 2018, I was traveling to one of the really, really big biotech biopharma business meetups in San Francisco. So this is the JP Morgan week. It's a collection of who's who in biotech, biopharma. And I thought, I'll take my bike stuff with me. I'll rent a bike while I'm out there. I had a you know, had a day off before things kicked off. So I don't know how well you know the area, but I planned a ride basically from Union Square and out over the Golden Gate Bridge and then into Marion Headlands and up Mount
Yeah.
Tam, and it was about 100k loop. And as I was thinking about this before I went out to JPM that year, I thought, you know what? There must be other people who are as passionate about cycling as I am, who are in town for JPM. Wouldn't it be a fantastic way to meet like-minded individuals from other companies, other organizations, start to build the network, start to think about the community, but do it from the perspective of the bike, basically, of that
Yeah.
kind of shared passion for biking. And that actually sowed the seed then for biotech bikers. And I came up with the idea. I started promoting this ride that I was planning on the Sunday morning there. And I saw it started to resonate out in a few ripples starting to kind of spread on the
Well,
uh
just to tap in here, if you're not watching, I have a big smile on my face because what you've done is, I talk about this all the time. I imagine around the JPM, biotech and healthcare conference, there's probably a decent amount of golf being played
sure.
on whatever
Yep.
golf courses there are in that area.
Yep.
And you took the incredible, TAM and that opportunity to ride your bike in
Yep.
some really beautiful mountains, and created a pull and a reason
Yep.
for cyclists to get on the bike and
Sure.
get a workout and network. So it like, you and I are of like mind. I think the difference here is that you had this sort of tent pole conference that's a really big
Yep.
deal every year, that people look forward to, that people
Yep.
strategize for, and there
Yep.
was something to really plan around. So I just think that's a fantastic story,
Yep.
because it's pretty specific. It's not like,
Yeah.
hey, let's give this a shot. There was something actionable that you could organize
Yeah,
around every
yeah,
single year.
yeah. No, absolutely, and so that became what's really the blueprint for what we do at Biotech Bikers, and the kind of the thought I had when I sort of organized that first event or that first ride was, well, I'm going to plan something here that I actually myself want to do. I'm going to have some fun while I'm there. I'm going to do something that I will enjoy. And then, hey, if there's somebody that wants to come along with me and share that experience,
Right.
that's fantastic. And we've kind of, and I'll talk about it a bit as we move through the conversation, but that philosophy has stayed with us, that the rides and the events that we do and the people that are responsible basically for organizing those, I always say to them, organize something that you want to do yourself, because if nobody turns up, then you're going to have fun doing it anyway. And actually, I had I had two people sign up for the for the event, and we kind of headed out, and and that was that was the inaugural Biotech Bikers event. So this is early 2018. What I saw immediately as well is, as I kind of posted this on on social media, there were organizations that are associated with the JPM conference that are very much focused on community building, on networking, and there was an instant resonance with those types of organizations, because I think they saw as well, hey, this is actually something that is quite different. Nobody was, as far as I know, nobody was doing anything similar or had done anything similar before.
I want to jump back in. I really love how you pointed out that there is I don't know if you use the word, but selfish element where you knew it was going to be a great ride. It's world-class cycling.
Yep.
And you wanted to bring other people along, but then at the end of the day, you wanted to do the bike ride.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
I love that, because the flip side, and obviously for most of us in business, you've walked the floor at conferences, you walk the floor at conferences for days. It is exhausting, and it saps the energy out of you. And so to inject something really special and say, I'm going to do this for me, but I want other people to join and have them enjoy it too. It's just awesome.
Yeah. And it's and then as a way of networking, this is just something that is super different from the usual wine receptions, or they have their place, that kind of more social, that sort of social type of as I said, wine canapes and those kind of things. It's relaxed, it's different, it's another type of networking environment. But this really gives people a different environment to do their networking in, and that's kind of the basis of what we try to do with Biotech Bikers. It is a community building, networking an initiative that we've started.
I think the other thing that we might have touched on in the contextual conversation before the interview is how things are changing. In 2018, there weren't going to be many pickleball tournaments or bike rides. It was all, basically based around alcohol and hors d'oeuvres, and that was it.
Right.
And I think, as what you've been ahead of the curve on is this trend of people bonding and connecting in real life around sports and getting sweat on.
Sure.
And I think that's going to resonate a lot with younger folks, because there's less appeal for free booze and that kind of network.
For sure. And I think the other aspect to it, Sam, is as well that what I certainly see over the last and I think certainly during pandemic and post pandemic, is that there is people are working in a lot more flexible kind of way. The hours aren't rigid, they aren't defined. Where you work, the environment that you do your work in isn't as defined as it has been in the past. There's a move, I think, people there's a classic talk of the work-life balance and all of that stuff, but those lines are blurring a lot more, I think. And I think what resonates
in a healthy way, I think.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's the point, that there's people want to if you can combine your workout, and like you say, you're getting a sweat on with maybe finding a new collaboration partner or discussing some kind of a deal, that's just optimal. So it becomes win-win.
And maybe next time we have you on the show, we can break down chemically what's happening when you're getting endorphins. And
right.
It's a better environment for business.
Sure.
I mean, you're outdoors, but let's be serious.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was so early 18. That sort of kicked things off. So it's just a great opportunity when you're traveling to a conference. If you can get on a bike and meet up with other people and do something together, that's really great fun. But then there's two other angles as well that I sort of had the vision for around that time, but they didn't really kind of start to materialize until actually we got to the pandemic years. Everything went. So I mean, the whole, as we all know, everything collapsed in terms of travel and conferences and all of those things. But there were these traditional big conferences that we were all going to as BD execs in biotech and pharma. They went virtual, and we all know about how Zwift took off around that time as well. By the way, I was a beta tester on Zwift, which I'm really proud of as well. So that was,
So
I
that
had,
would have
I
been
had
2014, 2015. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And I had my kind of dumb trainer hooked up to the bike at that time as well, which so that's another story. But Zwift started to take off, and then suddenly there was an opportunity that presented itself as at a virtual conference. Let's organize a virtual BiotechBikers meetup using Zwift, and that's what we did. So this was again one of the kind of regular conferences on the circuit. So this was the Bio Europe conference organized by the amazing EBD group. They produce a number of different themed conferences in our space across the year. They gave me a platform to be able to promote that first virtual Biotech Bikers ride. I had one other person turn up for that. It was a guy called Jason Brown, who's a BD exec based in the UK. But that actually was very serendipitous because Jason has become then one of the really core key people who's behind the success of Biotech
And that's what
Bikers.
it takes. It takes the early
Exactly.
adopters. It
Yeah,
takes
yeah,
folks that want to support and also
for sure.
benefit from the
Yeah.
network effect.
Exactly. So Jason, he got it and understood it from the get go. I mentioned EBD Group. There's a lady called Claire Macht who she was one of the people involved heavily in the production of the Bio Europe conference. Very very keen cyclist herself, so she got behind the concept and the idea, and so she's been a really critical person as well in the success over the last few years. And then there's another guy who we've got based out in Japan who's an old. I worked with him. We've interacted on the BD scene over many years. A guy called Tim Kendall, who actually he started his life. He was a semi-pro racer in the UK. He's probably the most authentic cyclist,
Accomplished. Right.
the most accomplished and
Yeah.
authentic cyclist of the four of us. But that kind of that period there, so 2012, set the scene of getting these key people together. Done a conference associated real life event previously. We tested out the virtual concept, and then Jason, in particular, being based in Cambridge in the UK, which of course, big life science hotspot, also happens to be lots of very very keen cyclists there. He was instrumental then in setting up a local chapter of Biotech Bikers in Cambridge, which kind of is the third. So I often talk about us standing on three pillars. One being conference associated events. We've got virtual stuff that we do, and there are local chapters or hubs as we call them.
And can you rattle off the hubs where they are?
Yeah, where aren't they? So Cambridge, Oxford, London, a place called Alderley Park in the UK. We've got a group in Northern Ireland. We've got nascent groups up in the north of England. So a lot going on in the UK. Two or three groups here in Sweden, Copenhagen. We've got a group in Flanders, in Belgium, San Diego, Boston. Where else? So Tim's heading up stuff in Japan, Paris, Hamburg. The list is endless.
Incredible. What kind of activities are those chapters getting
Sure.
into? What are they doing themselves?
Yeah, I have in each of the local chapters, in each of the hubs, I have somebody who is called a hub captain. They're basically somebody who is, in the biotech industry, biopharma, they're a keen cyclist, and they want to start a local BiotechBikers, a local BiotechBikers community. Conceptually, what we do then is that they kind of we give them the BiotechBikers brand, we give them the platform. All they have to do is come up with a route, decide on somewhere where they want to have a coffee stop, and then essentially turn up and lead the ride when.
And our rides, how frequently are they?
It varies, so
Yeah.
some of the hubs are really active. We've got a few now in the coming season where people are saying, okay, we want to schedule a regular monthly ride over the entire season, basically, which is great. Others are a bit more ad hoc and one
Hmm.
off. So it really, but again, it comes back to that kind of founding philosophy of the people who are the hub captains. They decide on a nice ride that they want to do and they want to have some fun themselves, and then people will come along and join those.
So thank you for laying all this out. Do you have opportunities for the different chapters you've got the Zwift ride.
Mhm.
Are there any other like online forums or anything like that the members across the world can all join together once a year or quarterly, whatever?
Yeah, that's we've mainly done that through
The conferences.
either through the conferences or through the
Cool.
Swift
Right.
rides as well. We just started using Discord so
Cool.
people can talk while they're working out on Zwift. We also I mean that's really really cool as well, the sort of Zwift angle, because we over several winters now we've had something called a winter series where jump on Zwift, work out together, and then hook up to a webinar, basically, which is
Right. Awesome.
a Q&A then with an invited guest. And we've had some absolutely fantastic guests from pretty high profile people from across the pharma biotech industries, quite well known previous heads of research at big pharma, or people from the investment community talking about deal making and investing, and then outside of that as well. And I think this has been personally for me one of the most rewarding aspects of all of this, is that the connections that we've actually made with the world of cycling has been really really exciting and really
It's
really
kind of the fun part. It's
interesting.
one of the fun
It's
parts. Yeah.
such fun.
Right.
So, we've had guests on some of these Zwift events who are from, we've had general managers from World Tour teams. We've had, recently retired World Tour pros coming on and talking to us. We've had people from, heading up research and development and design within, within cycling, within companies like wheel designers and wheel
Hmm.
aeronautical engineers who are designing racing wheels, and all of this kind of stuff. And I think what is so cool and inspiring there, and again kind of reflecting the way that people are thinking about business and doing business these days. It's all about taking in information, thinking about things differently. And I think when you get a perspective from somebody who's a general manager in a world tour team, we all know about marginal gains. We all know the difference that innovation makes in terms of equipment and technologies, and how people are fueling themselves and so on. And just listening to somebody talking about that from a different world and a different perspective, bring in the lessons there, and you bring in the insights, and it's just so.
It sounds like there are a lot of very smart, experienced
Yeah,
people in different categories. So you got
sure.
the kind of world tour pro who knows from practice how to get the most out of performance,
Yep,
and then you have a
yep,
lot of very
yep,
smart people from bikers that know, chemically what's going on.
yep,
What an
yep.
interesting group.
Yeah. No, exactly. And and hearing from an ex pro who was a road captain. And this is Lawrence Ten Dam, who he
Hmm.
retired just recently. He's making a big impact right now on the gravel scene. But he was with us, and he had a role late stage in his career as road captain. And what are the challenges of being a road captain in a multi-stage grand tour? So what can we learn from him in terms of what we're doing in our world?
And by the way, I wanted to just call out, as I mentioned to you, we just started doing live events, and our first was in December, then we followed up with February. We've got one scheduled for March. And I think it's really interesting how you've gone about growing BiotechBikers internationally and basically teeing up the different chapters, the different
Yep.
leaders in geographies all over the
Mhm.
world with a format that is not overcomplicated. It's
Yep.
sort
Exactly.
of the low hanging fruit that's attainable, that's doable, and not overthinking it, overcooking
Yep.
it,
Yep.
investing capital. And I'm sort of here taking notes
Yeah.
because it's easy to get ahead of yourself. It's easy to get out of your skis and
Yep.
over
Yep.
over promise, under
Yep.
deliver. So
Yep. Yeah, and remember as well, this is a spare time. It's a spare time passion project. It is a little bit by design that what we've done is really to keep
absolutely
it, keep it at a kind of
manageable level. Yeah.
yeah, basic manageable level. I always talk about growing this community in an organic way. Who knows what happens in the future? There's multiple options and directions that this all could go.
And for
Yeah,
those
yeah.
listening, the community is really something. You have more than 3,000 LinkedIn
Hmm.
members in the LinkedIn group.
Yep.
And trust me, I know I've been trying to build mine for a couple of years. It's a sound number generally, but
Yep.
also when we're talking about specific biotech, pharma,
Yep. Yep.
it's a whole lot when you get into the subcategory of your
Yep.
industry.
For sure, yeah, no, and we're really proud of that, and essentially that's the only real way that we have kind of measuring the engagement. But if you look, and talking of engagement, if you look at what we post on, so we used LinkedIn as really the main channel for promoting and reporting and updating on what we're doing. We have a website, we have an Instagram account as well. To be really frank, it's a time thing as well. I maintain the website.
Exactly. So I was just going to say I called that out specifically because at Hill Climbers we want to have all these channels,
Sure.
and you can only do so much when
Yeah.
it's not your
Yeah.
full-time
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
And to do a
Exactly.
bunch of them and have them at
Yeah.
30%
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
really frustrating, let me
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to consolidate and concentrate in LinkedIn makes a
Yeah.
ton of sense.
Exactly, and that works. We get, as I say, we get good engagement. But at the end of the day, it's all about the people, and it's about the community, and it's about actually getting together. Obviously, in real life. Yeah.
Well,
That.
congratulations. And Mark reached out after I think listening to or watching
Yep.
the Eric Min Zwift interview. And once again, I was just so thrilled to hear from you because we're after the same thing. I mean, it's like we said, doing the selfish aspect and getting outside and getting a workout, but really sharing that with people and
Yep.
building
Yep.
community around it.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep.
man,
Yep.
what a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. It's been an absolute joy to share this journey with you. I think let's keep our conversation going. I'm really happy to update and talk about what we're doing, and like we said as well, I think there's some great synergies there. We've got some good ideas. I think, Sam, of other things that we could do together.
Which, by the way, just to share, like we would love to show up in San Francisco or in
Yep.
Boston and join you guys,
Yep.
and we will seriously take a look at our calendars and try to make that happen because that's what
Excellent.
it's all about.
Exactly. Very good. Great.
So before, might be putting you on the spot a little bit before we
Hmm.
let you go, I would love to ask you, throughout your time riding bikes, you started
Hmm.
when you were a kid, and you've had this incredible career first in academia and then obviously doing a lot of important work in biotech and pharma. Do you ever contemplate and consider the parallels between the challenges on the bike, getting fit, racing people in the group, those parallels to your business development career? Do you ever consider those?
Not directly until you bring up the question.
So we're putting you on the spot. Great.
But it is a great question, because I think I could get really poetic about this and philosophical. The one I mean, there's a really simple parallel, right? You've got a sportive coming up, or you've got let's say you've got a sportive. So I've done there's a really famous amateur, amateur sportive here in Sweden, which is a tour of the kind of big long lake that's down in the, if you look at a map of Sweden, you see this long thin lake down in the south of the country, and it's about 300 or just over 300 kilometers to get all the way around it. And it's an annual sportive. There's about 20,000 people taking part in that.
How much
event.
climbing? Okay, that's a decent amount.
Yeah, it's not a lot actually.
Okay.
So it's not like the 312 in Mallorca or anything like that. I can't remember. It's less than 2,000.
300K is plenty, even without a lot of climbing.
Yeah. So it's well less than 2,000 meters of climbing. But I think the immediate parallel there is kind of that the journey of getting yourself from the start to the finish in an event like that is, you can compare that with the process of starting a deal discussion and completing that. So we talked before about like licensing IP and all of that stuff. They are marathon events, endurance events. There are hazards around every corner potentially, but prepare yourself as well as you can for that. You fuel yourself in the right way. You have the right people around you. You make sure that all of your tools and the toolbox is the best possible one, and you break it up into milestones, and literally and a 300k sportive, you are overwhelmed and daunted by the size of the whole thing, but break it up into manageable milestones and intermediate goals, and you can get yourself all the way around in one piece and kind of have a success at the end.
Well, I think to really emphasize, I think the first thing you said is it's an endurance event.
Yeah.
So you have to have an eye toward the long play, the long run.
Yep.
And if not, you're gonna come up against, I think, a lot more challenges than you would if you didn't have a long-term strategy.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think endurance and resilience, they're key, I think, in what we're doing. But like I touched on as well, it is also as well about the people around you, the support of your team, having fun, all of that kind of stuff is super important as well.
That's a fantastic answer, especially putting you right on the spot.
Yeah, well, like I say, I could get very poetic and philosophical and choose another analogy as well. But,
that was fantastic, and I think especially for biotech and pharma, where the life cycles of these companies and these deals it's a marathon, right? It's a long sportif. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, no, it is for sure.
Well, man, Mark, I'm so pleased that we connected, and I really am excited to see where BiotechBikers goes and collaborations for the future. It's just really fertile ground. So thank you for being our guest. Thanks for spending a lot of the time with us and telling us all about your world, because it's been really fascinating.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Just thanks for the opportunity, and look forward to speaking again.
All right, cheers.
Thanks very much.
All right, that was fantastic. And one of the ideas I have is to maybe cut this one and do a 2-part, because we covered so much ground in both categories of your career and BiotechBikers, and it's gonna mean a longer episode than normal. And what I've done in the past is broken them into 2. I think if I'm being like, learning about your career, that was fascinating. I think my priority is to share BiotechBikers with my community, and then once people know you, we
Yep.
can do a follow on
Yeah.
with your career.
Yeah. No, that sounds really good. I think, I mean, one thing we didn't touch on, which
Hmm.
I would like to somehow profile as well. So there's three main things. So one is the model, which I think is interesting. It's relevant for you and what you're doing in your community, and it's the how do we fund biotech bikers, because
Hmm.
we've got really good sponsors. People
Well,
have.
let's just keep running, and
Yeah.
you can,
Okay.
and I'll cut it in. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, so how do we segue into
So
that?
I can just segue in saying what you pulled together is a large organization. You've rattled off all the different chapters, and uh, I'm curious how, from a capital perspective,
Yep.
how do you fund the operation?
Great question. So what we saw from a very early stage in kind of the evolution of the whole thing was that there was a big interest from different types of organizations in our space in actually sponsoring biotech bikers and coming on board as partners. And so that's been the way that we've been able to build up a relatively modest capital that we can then use and make available to the chapters, or use to subsidize events associated with conferences, to produce kit, for example, to do various things that basically support the administration of what we're doing, and give us a little bit of a runway. But it comes back as well to what we were talking about, the model of what we're doing and the kind of low hanging fruit and the sort of basic framework that we work around. So what I don't want to do, I don't want to overpromise and
Hmm.
professionalize what we're doing too much. I want to keep expectations at a manageable and a reasonable level, and that led.
So
Yeah.
sorry. Finish
Yeah.
your thought, yeah, and then I'll jump in.
No, no, just going to say that what that then does is it gives us, we can do the basic stuff, and we cover the bases from a safety and a legal perspective, and those kind of things. That's the bare minimum. But as I say, we're not over promising, we're not over professionalizing the organization, and it lets us be flexible as well. That's really important. It also gives us some ability to, which is an important part of what we're doing, is actually to raise awareness of and contribute to some charitable causes.
Great.
Yeah. So we're working with Action Medical Research in the UK, for example, pediatric disease charity. We support Quebec Charity, which is a social mobility cycling based charity in South
Hmm.
Africa. And then also we have a really, really cool partnership with a inflammatory bowel disease patient advocacy organization that's headed up actually again by an ex-pro competitive cyclist called Corey Greenberg. That's called Ride for IBD. That organization. As I say, there is a financial aspect to what we're doing that's necessary, but we keep that at a manageable level.
And I think that's interesting, because my next question is, I guess, can you please share some of the current sponsors and what
For sure.
value are you bringing to them, if you're keeping the expectations manageable?
Yeah. So my company that I work for, Anoka, a Swedish cell therapy company, they are a sponsor. That was really important for me to bring them on board. I'm kind of combining my day job with what I'm doing in my spare time with Biotech Bikers, and using Biotech Bikers as a platform for Anoka as well, and helping people understand what we're doing, and getting us known within the community. So that's been really important. We've got long-term sponsor, a Lithuanian company called Kazzyme. They're working in gene editing space, and again, it gives them a profile and a platform in this community.
And beyond the logos on the jersey,
Yeah.
what's the deliverable? What do they get, as an example?
So there's I just mentioned the other main sponsors as well.
Oh,
So
yes, great.
we have an organization called Miltenny Biotech. We have an organization called Orientation Marketing, a UK-based business incubator and investment organization called O2H Group.
Hmm.
and I want to really make sure that I don't forget anybody, because that would be really embarrassing. Hopefully, you can still see me here. Just
Yeah.
make sure I'm covering everybody. You know, we've had a bunch of different sponsors over the years, a variety of different types of companies. I mean, obviously EBD Group. You know, we work closely with them. New sponsors that have come on board just in the last couple of months: an IP firm in the UK called Appleyard Lees, IMU Biosciences, which is the company where Jason Brown works right now. So, you know, we want to, as I say, we want this to be win-win for us, the volunteers that are kind of running all of this. Generally, so these are our what we call podium partners. So they are annual sponsors. They provide a level of financial or in-kind sponsorship per year. We rotate those. There are different each year. We want to work with organizations that share our values, you know, so again, promote healthy active lifestyle, you know, using health and wellness as a way of building a community, building partnerships and networks and so on. So that's important. And I think as well, oftentimes the people that are driving the sponsorship from the partners side, you know, they are people who understand what we're doing. They participate actively in our events. For them, you know, in some cases it's by sponsoring a BiotechBikers event, as we talked about, it's a different way for that organization to actually promote and market itself, you know, not the usual way of branding and marketing. So it's all about synergy and win-win.
It's interesting in that case, really the sponsors have, you know, I want to use the word equity in what you're doing. And they say, hey, you know, we're now part of BiotechBikers. It's a good opportunity to get their clients on board, to get employees. Really, it's, I think, some of the virtue that we've talked about of community, you know, a healthy exercise. It provides a bit of a halo effect for sponsors that are coming on board and being part of what you're doing.
No, absolutely. And we want to, you know, I again, a kind of fundamental principle that I run all of this around is actually being, you know, being generous with our sponsors, you know, being very flexible and really tailoring the sponsorship to what they want to get out. So I spend a lot of time listening to what they're looking for and what they want to get out of, you know, what they need from the sponsorship, and just really making sure that we meet that expectation. And then, you know, we're starting to do a few different things as well. We are actually now sponsoring somebody. So in our partnership with Ride for IBD, Corey and the Ride for IBD team, you know, they are coming out. They're providing back up the story. So we have a hub captain based in Stockholm, a lady called Christine Schwenk. She works for a biotech company. She's in BD. She also happens to be a really dedicated triathlete. She's doing her first full Ironman a bit later on this year. Yeah. So what we're doing there is that BiotechBikers and Ride for IBD have teamed up to provide her with clothing for the event and for her training. We're providing her with some equipment, some financial support, and what that does is, you know, she then what she's doing is she's very active on Instagram. You can follow her. She's charting her training journey. She is basically using her profile as a platform then for raising awareness around what we're doing at BiotechBikers, but then more importantly for the Ride for IBD story as well, which is, as I say, it's all about advocacy for people suffering from this really terrible inflammatory bowel disease. So that's something new for us this year. It's a bit of experimental, but you know, this is the whole thing. It's paying it forwards. It's you know, it's trying new things, being a bit opportunistic, but all in a, you know, all.
Well, yeah, I mean, just based on your membership, how active the community is, it sounds like the sponsors are really getting what they're putting in and engagement.
Yeah. No, we hope so. All
right, I actually need to jump now.
Brilliant.
But I'm really glad we got that last bit in. Thanks for getting that done.
Thanks a lot for that, Sam.
I will just be in touch as far as our plans for shipping these
Sure.
episodes, and we can do some collaboration as far as posting and
Yep.
you know.
Wonderful. Absolutely looking
uh,
forward to it. So let's keep in touch. It's been a
Okay.
real pleasure. Yeah. All right.
Likewise. All right. Good night.
Cheers. Take care.
See you, Mark. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye.